Hello everybody and welcome to this video about developmental and copy editing. This follows on from Amy's blog posts on the same topic, so if you haven't already, I'd go and have a read through that first. I'll put a link below this video so that you can find it easily. What I'm going to do is to put some of Amy's excellent advice into practice and show you how one of my pieces of writing has developed through editing. Some of you might have come across this piece before in our workshop sessions, but let's have a look. This version is from 2008. It wasn't the first version either, but it hadn't changed. This particular section hadn't changed much until this point. So the first thing to do, as Amy so rightly said, is to have a look through as a developmental edit. To look at things like plot, characters, theme, tone and atmosphere. Another thing that Amy says very wisely is that we should read through our work out loud, and that's really helpful. I do that a lot. Something else you can do if you're not keen on the sound of your own voice, or you find that a bit awkward, or if you just want to get a bit more distance from your work, is to have the computer read it to you. I'm working on a Mac here, and it's really easy. You highlight the text you want read and you choose speech, right click, speech, start speaking.
Moonside Chapter 1. Kiran pushed open the big glass doors of the salon. Squinting at the bright lights inside, he grimaced at Alice, who was slouched over the reception counter, and crept towards the back room, making as little noise as possible. But his cowboy boots may as well have been tap shoes for all the chance he stood of keeping them quiet on the laminated floor. You're late. Didn't I say last night? He tried for his brightest smile, but knew in his heart that Julie would see right through it. He didn't have the energy to try that hard, and it's not like she could sack him. Exactly. No clients till 10. It's 20 past. Fortunately she cancelled. The BlackBerry perm, Mrs. Stirling. Yes. Oh, right. And your girl isn't in either, Courtney. Apparently she has a college exam. Kiran raised an eyebrow. Don't ask me, said Julie with an exasperated sigh. She's your trainee. I suppose you want coffee? This time Kiran's smile was genuine, unforced, and Julie smiled right back. 2 sugars, he said. So who was he? Julie asked, turning towards the back room. Nobody, said Kiran. It just took me till 3 in the morning to give up looking, is all. And a lot of vodka. Sucks to be you, said Julie.
Okay, so there you have it. That's the first scene of my novel, read by a computer. And it really does point out the rhythm of your writing when you get it read in that way, because the computer is working entirely on your punctuation, your grammar, and all that kind of thing. But it can also help you to pull out a bit from the words and look at just what you're actually saying. So let's have a look at this then from what Amy was saying. So the first thing she talked about was plot and what's the function of this scene. Well, it's the first scene in the whole novel, so it's got 2 jobs really. One is to introduce the reader to the world, and the other one is to hook the reader and gain their interest. And the first thing I noticed looking at it there is it's very short. It's only barely a couple of 100 words maybe, so we don't get a lot of chance actually to do those things. In terms of engaging interest, we've got a bit of scene setting there. We know it's in a hairdresser's, and we gather that Kieran is the main character, and then there's something about him being late. We find that out. And that his assistant, his girl Courtney, isn't in either. So that's not a lot of information to really enthuse a reader or to get an idea of what's going on. There's not a huge amount of anything to engage you really. So I think as far as plot goes, it can definitely be improved. We need to put a bit more interest in there. We need to get the reader wanting to read more. Because of the nature of the story, and because it is a novel, we can't put everything into the first chapter, otherwise we'd give everything away. So we do need to keep some secrets. And I think for me, the main goal therefore, is to engage with character rather than with plot, because the inciting incident doesn't come for another couple of chapters. So I really need my characters to work harder to get the interest of the reader. Which brings me on to the second point of character in dialogue. We've got quite a lot of characters in a very short space of time. We've got Kieran up here. He's our first character. That's fine because he's our main character and our point of view character for this section, so he should be at the front. Then we have Alice. We have no idea who Alice is, just that she's slumped over a reception counter. And then we have Julie. This is Sterling, who's a client, we can work out. Courtney, who is apparently Kieran's girl. That's hilarious because actually Kieran's gay and she's his apprentice, so that doesn't work at all. And yeah, so we've got some main characters, or they appear to be main characters, but we don't know very much about them. We know a little bit more about Kieran. Obviously he's wearing cowboy boots, which is quite a thing. And what else do we find out about him? He's got a smile. Well, most people have smiles. And he's been out drinking and trying to hook up. That's all we know about him. So that's not really very engaging as a person, and it's not the person I have in my mind as Kieran at all. You're really not learning who he is in that first scene. And then the dialogue. I've made some classic mistakes here. I hope you noticed them as we went through. But the first piece of dialogue in the whole novel, "You're late," we have no idea who says it. It could be Alice or it could be Kieran. And actually it's neither. It's Julie, who we haven't even met yet. She's spoken before we even know who she is. So classic mistake. I say mistake, it's a first draft, this one, so it's allowed to be completely terrible. That's its job. But it's given me the raw material, but I need to make it work for its living. So that's a big mistake I need to correct. And then again, we've got the dialogue tag here for Kieran, in as much as we have an action attached to the dialogue. So he tried for his brightest smile. We can tell that it's Kieran speaking there. But then we presume that he's still talking just to Julie. We don't know who Alice is or what she's doing or why she isn't saying anything, but anyway. And then we have dialogue. Okay, it's fair enough. We don't need dialogue tags for that because we've established it's Kieran there. Therefore it must be Julie there, Kieran, Julie, and so on. And then he raises an eyebrow instead of speaking, which isn't brilliant. I mean, he's reacting, which is fine, but it doesn't really pop. And then towards the end we're warming up a little bit more, so we've got more action to go with the dialogue. Action is a really good way of showing how people say things rather than having to use adverbs. And I haven't got any adverbs here. I haven't got any "he said softly's" or anything like that, so yay me. And then towards the end, we're getting a bit of personality at last with this line, or pair of lines, because Julie is setting it up as his straight woman. Who was he? Nobody, said Kieran. It just took me till 3 a.m. to give up looking his all and a lot of vodka. So we know that Kieran likes to go out and party. So that's a really, really useful character clue, but it's the only one we've had so far. So that's the developmental edit pass. Theme, tone and atmosphere, we're not really getting a lot. All we've got is people. A brightly lit salon as a setting. They seem to get on okay, but Julie's a bit exasperated with him. It's not really tone and atmosphere as such. There's not much buzz about it. In terms of copy editing, it doesn't matter because we're going to change this. This needs a lot of work, so we're not worrying about full stops and all the rest of it at this point in time. So that's where I started from. Let's have a look at the more recent version. This is the 2020 version, and it still needs work. I'll tell you that now. But it's much, much better. I'm much happier with what it does. So we start with the same line. Kieran, let's just look at them side by side, and then you can see the difference. So Kieran pushed open the big glass doors of the salon. This line goes round in my head forever. But we've got a few key differences. We've got J hair, not the salon, but J hair. Presumably, I'm hoping, because it's called J hair, people will realise that it's a hair salon. But it's given it a name straight away, so it's not just a salon, it's a specific salon. Always be specific in your writing when you can. The bright lights have stayed the same, the grimace has stayed the same, and Alice has stayed the same. And he's changed his footwear because cowboy boots is just... I don't know whether I would have got away with it in 2008. Probably not then either. Definitely wouldn't now. So he's got Converse on, which says a bit more about him as a character as well. It's more unique and specific. And also, cowboy boots are really loud. So them being tap shoes is kind of... It doesn't really work. Whereas if his Converse may as well be tap shoes when Converse are sneakers, then that makes a lot more sense. And then Julie has emerged from the back room, stood in his way, arms folded across her tiny menacing body. So we've got a better idea of who Julie is, and we've introduced her before she speaks. I could put "you're late" on the end of that paragraph. I don't need to have the Julie said, but I quite like pacing it out, spreading it out for a bit of pacing. We'll talk about that in future sessions when we talk about rhythm in writing. I say last night, tried for his brightest smile, knew in his heart Julie would see right through it. I cut out he didn't have the energy to try that hard, and it's like she could sack him. We don't need to know any of that. We need to keep it crisp and moving to keep the reader engaged. It's 20 past, fortunately she cancelled. Okay, that's the same. Don't need to kind of go into it there. What I have put in here, and I'm not sure about this yet, it's still a bit of a work in progress, is a little paragraph about how he wouldn't have missed a client, and he did know that she wasn't coming in. It's not that he's missed it. He comes across as a bit slapdash and uncaring about his clients in the first version, and I wanted to get rid of that because Kieran cares a lot about his clients. He wouldn't have turned up late and missed somebody. And it also gives us a bit more insight into Julie's character. So something about the fierce incline of Julie's eyebrows told him to keep quiet. She needed something to be mad about, and it may as well be him. So that's again telling us something about his character. And then we've elaborated on who Courtney is. So apparently she has a college exam. She does. She's your trainee. You ought to know these things. So we've introduced who Courtney is without having to say Courtney, who was Kieran's trainee. We're still keeping it in the character voices, not the narrator's voice too much, but we've given the information that the reader needs. And Kieran's sugar intake has gone up. Exaggeration is a really handy method for characterisation. When your character has flaws or unique things about them, quirks, make them big ones so that we can really latch onto them. I didn't really notice. I mean, two sugars isn't all that much. Really, it is for me because I don't take sugar at all, but it doesn't stand out, whereas 3 sugars I'm cutting down is much more. And the fact that Julie doesn't respond to it, I hope conveys that she's used to him and his sugary ways. And then we have the same lines there because I think they work. Okay, so that's fine. And then you'll notice we carry on. So I won't go into all this because we haven't got time, but he basically goes on to talk a bit more about the salon. This bit here needs working on because there's a lot of it. It's a bit too much description at this point, I think. We'll see about that. These are all bits that we'll put in the version 3 edit, so I'm still dwelling on that. But there are some lines like, they all loved him because, to be honest, he was bloody good at cutting hair. Again, it's character. And we've got a bit more detail about Courtney straight away so that we can position those characters with each other. So we have Courtney's tutor talking about her. And Kieran's attitude to her is different to his attitude to the people he works with, so we can see a bit more of his characterisation there. And so it goes. So that's really how the developmental edit works. Bearing in mind version 1A, version 4. So there's been another 2 versions in between there. One of which was that this wasn't the beginning at all, and then it was again. So this is what I mean when I say that rewriting is writing, and that your first draft is just to get the words on the page. I couldn't have gone straight to this version without writing that version first. I had to get this down before I could make it into that, and I'll probably make this into something better as well, because I'm still not perfectly happy with it. Although at some point I'm going to have a deadline, so I'll have to let it go. That's the other thing. Editing does have an end point, and you need to let it go at some point. It'll never be perfect, ever. But when enough people tell you it's good, then you can let it go. And that's why your mentor for Creative Writing Heals 3 will be vital in telling you when you've reached that point, and it really is okay to let it go without keeping on improving it. And then the next phase would be the copy editing, of course. So I do that as I go through. Generally, when I've done a developmental edit, I'll go back through and just check that there aren't any obvious errors. But there are things that can be improved. I'm not sure about the commas. I'm not really good with commas, and so I think there doesn't seem to be a lot of commas in here to me. So I think what I'll do is when I send it to my editor, I will say, can you check the commas? And she's great at doing that, so she will. And then before I do the final version, I'll have a look through sentence by sentence and just make sure that there aren't any typos and it all makes sense. And you'll always find typos. There's always something you miss, so please don't worry about that. If you're not very good with punctuation and spelling, or if you have dyslexia and you find it really challenging, don't worry about any of that. That's what editors are for, really, is to help you with that copy editing at that final stage. Just as they can help with the developmental editing by pointing out things that aren't there. I think it was my editor who first picked up the whole thing about the dialogue not working here, because I hadn't introduced Julie before she spoke. I remember her saying that to me. So there you have it, a bit of a before and an after, and how I did it in between. I hope that's useful. Enjoy your own editing. It is a fun process. It's a very different process from writing that first draft. You're engaging a critical brain, and you're looking at things from different angles rather than just going with the flow and expressing yourself. But that doesn't mean it's not creative. It is creative. It's fun if you just let go of the self-criticism. So I talked about making mistakes here, and I couldn't really think about a better word for it. But when I read this back, I'm actually quite proud of what I did. I got words on a page. Yay! That's really important. I'm much more proud of this version of the writing, but I couldn't have done that without the first. So please don't be hard on yourself. If you notice things you want to change, just change them. You've made yourself a big ball of plasticine, and now you get to make it into what you want it to be. So remember, write without fear, edit without mercy. And I'll see you next time. Bye for now.